Good morning. I'm Patricia Doxey with the Daily Freeman, and we're here today with Emmanuel Nneji and Mike Kavanagh, the two candidates running to become the next Ulster County District Attorney. Also joining us today is Yvonne Lahara, the Freeman Senior Editor. Good morning, gentlemen, and thanks for agreeing to sit down virtually with us to discuss your candidacies.
Good morning.
As outlined previously, the format we will follow is that each candidate will be given 3 minutes to deliver opening statements, which will be followed by a series of questions that have been submitted by our readers. At the conclusion, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to deliver their closing remarks. We received a significant number of questions, and we'd like to get to as many as possible. So let's get right to it. Manny, you're up first, so if you'd like to offer a opening statement. Yvonne will be our timekeeper, and you can go.
Thank you. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for providing this forum and the opportunity to speak to the people of Ulster County today. Fairness is the only path to justice, and justice, in the end, is the only way we guarantee our safety and the enjoyment of our freedoms. I have dedicated my life to this principle, serving for 32 years as a prosecutor under both Republican and Democratic leadership in Ulster County, as an assistant DA and as an assistant New York State Attorney General. I left Nigeria in 1980 to come to America and attend college at SUNY New Paltz, where I worked as a dishwasher and janitor on campus to pay for my education. Then I worked at McDonald's in New Paltz to save money for 2 years to save money for my first year of law school at SUNY Buffalo. Motivating me at every step of the way was a strong sense of self-respect and personal dignity. That is what I see in every person. Acceptance of personal dignity in everyone is essential for equality for everyone. Over the years, I have prosecuted hundreds of cases, from fraud, burglary, and animal cruelty to the most violent crimes of rape and murder. My aim has always been to provide justice for all, for the victims, for the community, and for the accused. As district attorney, I will continue to hold violent criminals accountable to keep our communities safe. But for non-violent offenders and those who do not threaten public safety, we must act with discretion, because having the hammer of the DA's office does not mean that every offender or every offense is a nail. We must treat each case based on its facts and circumstances and seek alternatives for those who are struggling with mental health, addiction, and poverty. My office will work to prevent crime with programs that protect the elderly from fraud and exploitation and help kids understand the stark finality and consequences of gangs and gun violence. I want to see the next generation of DAs develop from the energetic and diverse team of men and women working in the DA's office right now who are dedicated to serving justice. If you want fairness and justice for all, without favor or fear, I ask you to choose me as your next district attorney. I invite everyone to my campaign website, mannyforda.com, for more information and extended answers about any issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manny. Mike?
Okay, thank you. First, I want to thank the Daily Freeman for hosting this event and giving the electorate an opportunity to make an educated decision about who they think should be the next district attorney of Ulster County. So, as many people know, I ran for DA in 2019. I was the chief assistant at the time, working under Holley Carnright, and the result of that election was I lost by 78 votes. At the conclusion of that campaign, I was resolved. I was not going to run again. I was not going to get involved. I found another job. I was very happy. And then the next 3 years happened. And during those 3 years, we saw what transpired with the DA's office. And quite frankly, it was a disaster. I will tell you right up front, I happen to have nothing but respect for Mr. Nneji. I consider him a friend. We've known each other for a long time. But quite frankly, he's been part of the problem. We've seen murderers walk out of jail. We've seen acquittals. We've seen plea bargains of people of very serious offenses. There's been a mass exodus of prosecutors from the DA's office starting in 2020. Seasoned, committed, career prosecutors who left that office because they were not satisfied with the leadership. Over the last couple of years, I've been approached by countless people who have implored me to run, people from all walks of life. Republicans, Democrats, officers, neighbors, friends, strangers have come up to me and said something needs to be done. Defense attorneys, public defenders, people who are have intimate knowledge of the workings of the DA's office have approached me and asked me to run. So I decided to run. And I'm in it here. I'm committed. And I know that I can make a change. That office needs a change. There needs to be a change in leadership. What's happened over the last 3 years is not acceptable, and Ulster County deserves better. Now, by way of experience, I'm currently working at the law firm of Nneji, doing civil work and criminal defense. I also am a part-time public defender where I represent indigent clients who are charged and accused of committing crimes. Prior to that, I was the chief assistant under Holley Carnright for 4 years. I worked in that office for about 9 years. During most of my 23-year career, I've been a prosecutor. But I am the only candidate here who's actually represented someone accused of a crime, which gives me a unique perspective of the criminal justice system. Mr. Nneji's never represented anyone accused of a crime. He is a career prosecutor. And that unique perspective has enabled me to see the criminal justice system from a very different vantage point. When you stand next to somebody who's accused of a crime, it can be a very daunting experience. I'm running out of time, so I will abbreviate this. One point I want to make that I think is very significant is during this campaign, I've received the endorsement of every single law enforcement agency that offers endorsements. And when my opponent, who's received no endorsements from law enforcement, is the current sitting chief assistant district attorney with 33 years of experience, that's a vote of no confidence. And that's something that should be very significant to the voters. And ask yourself, why is that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Actually, that's a sort of a segue into the first set of questions that were posed by readers. I've broken it down into groups of questions because many of the questions sort of were in the same category. So the first question is, since DA Clegg's election, one reader says there's been an exodus of experienced attorneys plaguing the office, resulting in what the reader says is low morale and a lack of experienced ADAs in the office. What will you do to ensure that capable prosecutors that live in this county remain in your office? And Manny, you can go first on that question.
Thank you. The exodus of experienced prosecutors started with my opponent. When he lost, 4 experienced prosecutors followed him out the door because they protested the constitutional result of our elections, because their preferred candidate did not win. That was not in service to the people of Ulster County. That was not in service to the victims of crimes that we prosecute. What we have done since the new laws went into effect, more prosecutors, more experienced prosecutors left because the work has become enormous. So much so that you have to work so many times, so many hours a day to keep up with the full amount of work that we were putting into the office during the Kavanagh administration. But in the last 2 years, since I was appointed chief assistant, we have made such progress that we are now better than most DA's offices in the state. Check with DCJS. Review the Albany Times newspaper article. We are doing better than most district attorneys' offices in the state. And you know why? We brought in young people, energetic people who care about service to Ulster County, to the people of Ulster County. And that's what I'm going to continue to do, because Ulster County deserves dedicated service to the people of Ulster County. not a fleeting interest in being a prosecutor. Thank you.
Mike, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. First of all, just so the record is clear, the 4 prosecutors that you mentioned were career prosecutors. And they left the office not because they protested some constitutional results of that election. Everybody acknowledged Mr. Clegg won by 78 votes. Nobody protested those results. They left the office because they didn't want to work for a man whose campaign was based upon taking shots at the very office he wanted to lead. He was disparaging attorneys in the way they handled cases. His platform was one they didn't agree with. It was focused more on the defendant's rights than the victim's rights, and they didn't want any part of that. And that's 4 of them. 4 out of how many? 18, 19 people left that office. A good 3/4 of that office left, not just the 4. And they left for a reason. And I know what that reason is because I work with a lot of them at the public defender's office. They told me the reason. The reason is because it is completely disorganized in the DA's office, that there is no leadership. They were not satisfied with the job that was being done. They were unclear about their role and their responsibility, and there's no communication. That's why other people have left. And let the record be clear. Many of the people that left the office were actually hired by Mr. Clegg. And they in turn left the office for the same reasons as everybody else. So these are career prosecutors, people who dedicated their lives to serving this community as prosecutors, who decided it would be better off to go to the public defender's office or private practice or some other area of law rather than stay with the job that they loved, but was not the same job that they signed up for. It was changed drastically. So that is why people left the office, not because they were dissatisfied with the result of the election. They were, of course they were. And I have spoken with a number of people who have asked if they can come back when I'm elected. They want to come back to the office and resume the job that they did because they think new leadership is what that office needs. And they also recognize that then leadership is not going to change if Mr. Nneji is elected. Thank you.
Manny, you have a minute to respond if you choose.
Thank you. It's very easy to cast stones from afar because in this instance, if these individuals were actually dedicated, what does their leaving mean to the people who are the victims of crime, to the community, and to the responsibility that we have for defendants as prosecutors? What does that mean? They left, leaving that service, the protection of victims, the protection of the community, to a group of people, to a group of prosecutors that they consider to be inept? No. Do they still live in Ulster County? Yes. Why didn't they move out? They still live here. They still work here. They left because they were afraid of the work that was imposed. And this is across the state. In fact, in some county upstate, they were offering $128,000 for the chief assistant position, and nobody was taking it for months. The work was heavy. It is heavy, but we are doing it. Thank you.
Mike, any last word?
Mr. Nneji, the truth is you actually applied to Ruth Boyer, the public defender's office, for a position during that time frame. So you're talking about commitment to the office. You were ready to leave as well, but she didn't offer you the job. So, when you sit here and you cast dispersions on people who did leave the office, I think that's something that becomes relevant. I wasn't going to mention it, but that becomes relevant.
Well, you know very well, I didn't know if Dave Clegg was going to keep me or if he was going to keep you. You left. He said to everybody, you need to stay. You can stay if you want to. Once he said that, I chose to stay. You and others chose to leave.
Mr. Clegg never offered me a job. He already hired Kitty Van Loan as the chief before he even took office. I didn't have a job there. I didn't leave. I was forced out.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. And Mike, this is to you first, right? Yes. What would you do differently from Mr. Clegg if you're elected?
Well, I think there's got to be some training. Look, there are some terrific young assistant district attorneys. I will in that office. I will give Mr. Nneji and Mr. Clegg credit. They've done a good job hiring. I work with them as a member of the public defender's office. they're outstanding. The problem is they're not receiving any training. They're not experienced, and they're having serious cases thrust upon them that they may not be ready to handle. And there have been some results that have reflected that. Again, I have nothing but respect for the attorneys, the ADAs that I work with on a day-to-day basis. There's got to be some sort of structure there. Everybody needs to be held accountable, and that's not happening. There's got to be direction. There's got to be leadership from the top on down to make sure everybody understands their job and they are well prepared to do it. There also needs to be a massive repair in the relationship with the local law enforcement, and the endorsements establish that very clearly. I have heard nothing but dissatisfaction from the police about the jobs that are being done with their cases. These are brave men and women that are doing everything they can to keep this community safe. And they're seeing time and time again their cases being reduced down to nothing or being dismissed because the prosecution is not turning over discovery in a timely manner. There have been dozens of serious cases that have been dismissed for that very reason. They're not satisfied. And so there needs to be a repair done with that relationship so that we're all working together for the betterment of this community and so that we can keep people safe. And that's first and foremost what has to be done. I think that there needs to be some the cases that are prosecuted need to be better vetted. There are cases that are being indicted that shouldn't be, and there are cases that are not being indicted that should be. And I think, again, that comes from the top on down. You have to have experience to understand what cases are important. And then when you establish that those cases are important, it is imperative that the discovery is turned over, they're handled properly and professionally. And that I will do. I will make sure that is done from the top on down.
Manning?
Thank you. Well, since the last 2 years when I became chief assistant, I made changes to correct the problems left by the Carnright Kavanagh administration. The discovery laws went into effect on January 1, 2020. They had 9 months to set up a discovery unit. They did nothing, absolutely nothing. They gave defense attorneys 30 days to access discovery materials. Defense attorneys, no attorney makes a cup of instant coffee in 30 days, let alone access discovery on, in electronic system. So when I became chief assistant, you know what I did? I changed it. I changed it to give the defense attorneys the maximum of 90 days. That problem he is referring to, that's old news. It no longer happens. In addition, we give defense attorneys hard drives. Those who do not have the finances to pay, we give it to them for free. Those who have the finances to pay, they reimburse us. Again, it's to promote the idea of fairness, the idea of making sure things work more efficiently. And that's what the office has been doing. But you know something? I worked in that office. I have worked in the DA's office from 1990, December 31st of 1990, through 2000 to 1998, under former Judge Kavanagh. That office was an impeccable place to work. The work ethic was incredible. I worked under Don Williams from 98 to 2007. The same thing, the work ethic continued. When I returned in 2014 to that office, it was so degraded. It was so degraded under the Carnright Kavanagh administration that it was embarrassing. So I've been there, I know what I'm talking about, and I've seen all the administrations, and I've done the work for 32 years protecting Ulster County. Thank you.
Mike, do you want to respond?
I do. So first of all, with regards to the changes that Mr. Nneji's made to the discovery process, in the public defender's office alone this year, there's been 11, 12 serious cases that have been dismissed for failure of the prosecution to turn over discovery. So apparently there's work that needs to be done still. And with regards to the status of discovery response and the 9 months that our office had to respond and to set up protocols for discovery. This was a statewide response, and Mr. Nneji knows it. Once the discovery laws were changed, and the process of addressing those changes and adapting to them was done through the District Attorneys Association of New York and through the Prosecutors Training Institute, where they developed a program called DEMS. It was not finished yet when we left office because it was such a short turnaround. So we didn't have that option. And the discovery unit that he's talking about, he has that because they've got a $760,000 grant to do that. We were not given that. So it's a little misleading when he talks about how unprepared the office was. Finally, they had all of COVID to get themselves prepared. The courts were shut down for a year to establish proper protocol, and they failed to do that.
Manny, last word.
Well, as you know, and as everybody knows, COVID stopped everything except crime. I'll say it again. COVID stopped everything except crime. That was the same across the state. That was the same in Ulster County. And you know something? We did the work to prosecute those individuals, and we are prosecuting those individuals. In fact, some of the individuals we're prosecuting were from cases that were bungled in 2018 and 2019. The cases that were supposed to be prosecuted in 2018 that weren't fully and properly taken care of. The cases that were bungled in 2019, resulting in one of the most horrendous murders in Ulster County. I'm sure you know what case I'm talking about, where women were tied up, children were traumatized, and the man was beaten and shot to death in his home in Kingston, a case that you bungled in 2018, 2019, resulted in the individual who participated in that crime, who is coming up for trial, being released from jail. He had been pending attempted murder charge. You reduced it to a misdemeanor, and he got out of jail after Ulster County jurors indicted him for attempted murder. So please spare me this mighty talk about how good the Carnright administration was.
Thank you. So following that, there have been numerous and serious cases that have been dismissed for speedy trial violations and other missteps during the Clegg administration. We often hear that it was the result of discovery laws. However, as you know, interviews with district attorneys' offices, neighboring district attorneys' offices, indicated that they didn't have those same problems. For instance, in Dutchess County, they had no cases dismissed during that same time period. Additionally, you know, the office has been criticized for those discovery violations in court. Manny, can you respond to those criticism and explain how you, and I think that you've sort of answered this, but how you intend to prevent this in the future?
What I have said about how to continue the discovery process improvements that we have made, and we made them because they are essential to the fair administration of justice in Ulster County, something that everybody deserves, something that everybody, including the individuals that we seek to prosecute vigorously. As we seek to prosecute them vigorously, we do recognize that they still have the personal dignity that they are endowed with from birth, just like everybody else. We continue to prosecute them vigorously and make sure that we give them the discovery, the sharing of evidence, which helps them understand the case and make a decision as to what to do going along with their attorneys. But those dismissals that Mr. Kavanagh is talking about, they are across the state. And if you go to the DCJS website, you will find that Ulster County is better than Dutchess County, is better than most counties in this area, just about every county in the state. Go look at the DCJS report. Look at the Albany Times Union report. So this whole nonsense about cases being dismissed. Yes, cases were dismissed as a result of the difficulties we were facing. The times that we had to do cases were changed. But those were non-violent cases. Those were cases where no one was endangered. So it is important for the press to be fair. The press, the local press, and I say it specifically, the Daily Freeman, has not done the job in terms of reporting fairly about what goes on. If the Daily Freeman would check around and see what's happening everywhere else, I think it would serve Ulster County community a lot better. Thank you.
Mike, what would you do differently to ensure cases aren't dismissed and that the office does adhere to the discovery requirements?
What I said before is you need to identify certain cases, make sure that they're handled properly, and make sure discovery is complied with. There's a handful of major cases that happen. Fortunately, Ulster County is a relatively state community. It's not hard to identify the cases that need to be handled properly. First and foremost, murder. So, when Mr. Nneji states that the discovery cases were nonviolent and nobody was hurt, I think Mr. Underwood of Underhill, I apologize, of Raymond Snyder, when he was charged with murder, indicted for murder, and based upon discovery violations, much of the evidence that was necessary was suppressed. And please keep in mind that the decisions by Judge Rounds to suppress that evidence, those were all violations under the previous discovery rules, not as a result of the new discovery reforms. So, you could talk about all these cases and how well Ulster County is doing. It's very easy to pad the stats when you're making plea bargains to everybody to avoid holding people responsible. And that's what we see happening now. They're being offered plea bargains, sweetheart deals, so that people don't have to challenge the discovery rules and so that there are no motions to dismiss. Cases are getting resolved more quickly that way when you're offered sweetheart deals. I would not do that. Again, identify the cases that need the most attention, make sure they're handled professionally, make sure they're handled properly, make sure the discovery is turned over, and that will resolve a lot of the problems that is confronting this DA's office right now.
Manny?
Well, Mike knows that David Clegg did not come into office until 20 days after the discovery laws went into effect. So he was the one managing the discovery laws at the time that Snyder became a crime. In any event, the Snyder case, I was prepared to go to trial. In fact, I had just finished a murder trial about a month earlier. I jumped from that murder trial to take over a case that two assistant DAs, experienced assistant DAs working on the case, had left. I jumped in to protect the interests of the victim, the interests of the community, and to uphold justice in Ulster County. I wanted to prosecute that individual and make sure he was held responsible for his crime of murdering another human being in Ulster County. I was ordered not to introduce any evidence identifying this man, not to have any witness point to him as the one who committed the crime. No district attorney in Ulster County, past and present or future, no district attorney in this state, or in fact in this country, would walk into court to try such a case. You've subpoenaed your witnesses like I did, but you're told you cannot have them point to the individual. No district attorney will walk into court to try that case. It's unethical to do so. It would be a violation of the law to do so because the law requires you to have legally sufficient case to go to trial. It would be a waste of the tax resources of Ulster County and its people, making people come from all parts of Ulster County, the mountains and the lowlands, to come to Kingston for a trial. That was a sham. I informed the judge I wasn't going to be in there. And as a result, I did not go in. We filed the Article 78 proceeding. We sued the court, and we expect that result to be changed.
Mike,
Thank
30 seconds, and then we're going to move on, I think.
Okay, very good. So, we're talking about ethical responsibilities of prosecutors. You turned over a data dump a week before that trial to the defense that was so massive that it actually crashed the public defender's server a week before trial. I think an argument can be made that it's an ethical obligation to turn over discovery in a timely manner so that the accused has an opportunity to be prepared for trial.
Without that,
Hang on a second, you had your chance. Further,
sorry to
there was a perfect remedy for you and your office to go forward with an emergency appeal that would have stayed the trial and would have allowed a superior court, the appellate division, to determine the suppression rulings of Judge Rounds that you find distasteful. That was a proper remedy that was available to you, and for reasons unexplainable, even though you told the press you were going to do that on multiple occasions, you did not, and you didn't file this Article 78 for months after the trial. So there's a lot of culpability that falls on your office for not taking what is the common sense approach to handling the decisions that were made that impacted your trial.
Well, as you very well know, there is a difference between suppression,
And preclusion, I do.
Judge Rounds did not suppress the evidence. He precluded the evidence. Because of the preclusion, we were not entitled to appeal. So we took the route that, because the judge exceeded his authority, we believe, we took the route to file Article 78 proceeding. And I expect that to turn the result around from that instance.
We need to move on.
Yeah, I'd like to move on. I think that we've discussed this pretty thoroughly. On a different topic, a reader says that according to a 2022 report by the New York Civil Liberties Union, in Ulster County, Blacks are convicted 7.3 more times than whites and are 23 times more likely to be convicted of a drug felony. If elected, what will you do to address this seemingly statistical significant difference in sentencing outcomes between people of color and whites? Mike, I think you're up first.
Sure. So I think everybody knows nationwide there is an issue with disproportionate prosecution of people of color. I think statistically that's well established. As district attorney, I would not see what a person's color is. That is not something that factors into determinations about how a case moves forward. We see the evidence, we speak with the victim, we examine the proof, we determine based upon criminal history or lack of criminal history what an appropriate disposition is made, would be, and we move forward on that basis. Now, every person's background, as a defense attorney, I know that there are two sides to every story, and everybody comes to the criminal justice system with their own history. And if somebody has been disadvantaged, no matter what their race, creed, religion, if they've been disadvantaged and those disadvantages put them in a position of having contact with the criminal justice system, that's a factor that needs to be examined when determining what an appropriate disposition will be. We've done that. We did that under Holley Carnright, under Don Williams, under Mike Kavanagh. And I'm not suggesting this office doesn't do that either. I don't have criticisms of this office with that regard. I think they've been very fair in that area. And so you're not going to hear anything from me in my dealings with the defense attorneys or with the ADAs that I deal with on a daily basis. I find them very reasonable, particularly on the lower level cases. So this is not an attack on their office at all. I happen to think that's an appropriate way to approach prosecutions. And I think Mr. Nneji and his office do that now.
Manny?
This is an area where transparency is absolutely necessary. If there was transparency, what happened during the 2008 through 2019 Carnright Kavanagh administration would have been shocking to most people, because it is never appropriate to prosecute one from the middle of Kingston or from Saugerties or from Ellenville or from New Paltz or from anywhere else in Ulster County, but treat someone else similarly situated and perhaps even more so with a serious drug possession, and have a senior assistant DA take that case from another assistant DA and dismiss it without any explanation, simply to do someone a favor. Okay? This is where transparency is very important, just like transparency in the Jacob Jackson case that was reduced from an attempted murder to a misdemeanor. The man walked out of jail and is now, about 10 days or so after the election in 2019, he participated in the most heinous crime in Ulster County and is now pending trial. Transparency is essential. We have individuals who are charged with drug possession. Some are all drug sales. We know in law enforcement that some of those individuals, some of them have a drug issue, rather than being, drug dealers in essence. Those are individuals that need to be treated differently. Individuals who are selling for their own, to support their own habits. Maybe we have to find that discretion, use that discretion that the DA has, instead of seeing everyone as a nail and hitting them with that hammer. It's important for us to exercise discretion, get compassion involved. Thank you.
Mike, do you need to respond to that?
Yeah, I do. Referring to Jacob Jackson, I do recall that case. Mr. Jackson was the driver in a drive-by shooting case. The shooter got 15 years. Mr. Jackson's case was not strong. It never was. We ended up prosecuting that because we wanted to avoid a murder. It was a gang case. We did everything we could to make the case against him. It wasn't there. We sought his cooperation, and as soon as we sought his cooperation, the co-defendant went in and pled guilty. And so the result was a plea that we didn't like. We didn't want to do it. We were forced to. It wasn't something that we were satisfied with. And I think you would understand sometimes cases don't work out the way you want. But we did it in the interest of the public safety. And that's why we went forward on that. So to suggest that it was bungled in some way, shape, or form, sometimes witnesses are scared and they don't want to come forward. And in that particular case, it was not a strong case against the driver because we had no way of establishing that he knew a drive-by shooting was going to happen. So we did what we could. But the shooter got 15 years, which is a lot more than Raymond Snyder got.
Manny, if you would like 30 seconds.
Mr. Jackson admitted in front of Judge Williams while you were in court that he did participate in that attempted murder. You offered him a plea to assault in the second degree and bungled that, which is why he ended up getting out on a misdemeanor. He had pled guilty to assault in the second degree. Why did he end up getting out? Assault in the second degree is a class D violent felony. Why did he end up getting out? And a few months later, participate as charged by an indictment in a murder that traumatized kids with women tied up. Why? The victim wasn't scared. She wasn't even consulted, which is one reason it's important for victims to participate in this process.
That's not fair, and that's not true. And that's not true because you have the file. I don't. So to say that the victim was not consulted is absolutely wrong, and that. That's disappointing that you would say that. Very disappointing.
Mike, I read the file because I prosecuted Jacob Jackson for 3 gun possessions after he got out on that case. And you know something? I convicted him. He is in prison for 10 years in connection to my conviction. He is awaiting trial for the murder that happened 10 days after you lost the election. If he had been prosecuted in August of 2018, there never would have been a victim.
I think I need to move on here, and I want to talk about white collar crime a little bit. These next set of questions come from readers who want to know what this office's position is on white collar crime and what you will do, each of you will do, to pursue those kinds of crimes. Manny, this question comes from a county legislator as both a lawmaker and a resident. He says he's seen the DA's office unwilling or unable to prosecute white collar crime. He cites what's happening with Burt Golnick, who was arrested several months ago and has not been indicted yet. And also the DA's here to date, I guess, inaction, I don't know, on the report that came from the comptroller on the CARES 2 audit. What will you do to restore confidence, this person asks, and empower the county's ability to hold financial crimes in and outside of government accountable?
Okay. If you go to my website, mannyforda.com, you will see that I have a history of prosecuting financial crimes. Those excuse me, those crimes that involve various people, including government officials. I will not comment on the Golnick case because it's a pending case, and I am involved in the office where the case is pending. It would be inappropriate for me to comment on it. About CARES 2, I have not seen any referral to the DA's office in connection to that. I have not seen any charge brought to the DA's office or made by any police agency in connection to that. So it is not a question of unwillingness. It's a question of doing the due diligence that a prosecutor is supposed to go through to make sure that you can prove a case before you bring a case, to make sure that you're not responding by a knee-jerk reaction to whatever is out there on any given day for political advantage. That has never been me in 32 years as a prosecutor. It's never going to be me if I am fortunate to be elected. It's important that we take the time and make sure that we recognize the fairness of what we do in each and every case. And also, I'm going to invite anyone watching, anyone listening, please go to my website, mannyforda.com. You will have a lot more answers, a lot more exposition of some of the issues being discussed here. I did that. My campaign has put that up because it matters. You will find more information regarding the Snyder case on that website because it matters. It is important for the community to know in order to make this decision. That's very important. Thank you.
Mike?
So I won't comment on the Burt Golnick situation because obviously that is being investigated and he's been arrested, and I don't know. I'm not in a position to comment on what actions the district attorney's office has taken or is about to take. So I'm going to leave that one alone. The CARES 2 grant, however, Mr. Nneji has indicated that he's received no referral from any law enforcement agencies or anyone else and no charges. As DA, I'm not waiting for that. I don't need an invitation to investigate something that bears looking into. In this particular situation, we have the county controller's report, which suggests the possibility of intentional misleading in the awarding of certain grants. Could it be criminal? Well, why else would somebody do something intentionally unless there was a reason, a motivation behind it to mislead? And when misleading is involved, there's potential fraud. I'm not saying there is. I don't know. But if I was DA, I would have already been investigating that. I would have met with the comptroller, would have gone over her audit findings and launched an investigation to determine if there was any criminality. And if there was, that person should be held accountable. And if not, the public has a right to know. But that's part of the responsibility of the district attorney's office. And clearly they are waiting for an invitation. I don't think that's right. I think the DA's office needs to be proactive, regardless of political affiliation. And Mr. Nneji talks about being independent and not political. I'm not enrolled in any party. I'm not affiliated. I think it's imperative that the district attorney's office remains above the fray, that it's free from any political influence whatsoever. I am not aligned with any party. I owe nobody. I owe people nothing from either party. And I think that's a huge distinction between our candidacies here. Because if you go around and you see Mr. Nneji's signs, in huge writing on the bottom, it says Democrat. Mine don't. I don't have a political affiliation because I think politics have no place in the district attorney's office. Thank you.
Well, we have the knee-jerk reaction as to something that the comptroller has reported. But your friend and former police chief in Saugerties has something that was referred to the Attorney General. I didn't hear any comment from you about that. That matter has been referred to the Ulster County DA's office now. I haven't heard anything from you about that. Let's not pick and choose. If you're going to do what you're doing, then do it to everybody, whether they like you or not, whether they're your friends or not, whether they come from Saugerties or not, all over. It's best to be transparent.
Mr. Nneji, I didn't need to make any comments. I didn't need to make comments because your office is investigating.
About not being enrolled. Yes, I am an enrolled Democrat. I have been a registered Democrat for over 15 years. I am not afraid to be identified as who I am. That's who I have been, as I have been protecting Ulster County for 32 years. That's who I have been, as I have protected victims and, in fact, been fair to defendants and the community for 32 years. I'm not embarrassed to be a Democrat. You are courting Democrats. You ran against Democrats the last time. You are courting them now. You're asking your voters, your MAGA voters who cannot stand Democrats. You're asking them, oh, you know, let's stay quiet here. I'm going to try and siphon some Democrats off from Manny. That's not going to work. You are a Republican. You are a MAGA guy. Put on the red hat. Put on the red hat, Mike. You're too young to run from who you are, from what party you belong to. Thank you.
Mike.
So, yeah, put on the MAGA hat and all that's dog whistling and whatever you have your say. I am not enrolled in any party, and anybody who knows, yeah, sure, I'm not shying away from it. I grew up in a Republican household. I've been a registered Republican for most of my life, but I am dissatisfied with the two-party system. I am dissatisfied with the national platforms of both parties. And between the two candidates here, I'm the only one who's actually volunteered, along with my wife, for Democratic campaigns. You never have. I've donated money to Democratic candidates. I voted for whoever the best candidate is under all circumstances, including Democrats. So you can't say that. You can say that you're a lifelong Democrat and you're proud of who you are, but that doesn't mean you can't vote for the best candidate. So it's imperative, and I think this is an important thing for people to understand, that being non-enrolled in a party means that I don't owe anybody when I'm elected. I don't owe anybody any favors. I have plenty of supporters from Democrats, so I got bad news for you. It is working, and I am courting all voters in Ulster County, no matter who they are, because I think I'm the best candidate. I think your office has struggled over the last 3.5 years with maintaining safety and public safety in this community, and the priorities are wrong. I will represent a district attorney for members of all parties.
So we're running a little bit tight here, and I do want to get to one other topic. Manny, I'll give you 30 seconds if you need it. Otherwise, we can move along.
Yes, I do. I do vote. I vote in every election. I vote for the best candidate. I vote for the best interest of Ulster County. I vote for the best interest of our constitutional process. I am not afraid to ask for Republican votes while I am still registered as a Democrat. I am a Democrat. That's who I am. I am not going to shed my political affiliation just because I'm running for election. I think it's dishonest. You are running on the Republican line. Yes, you are. You are running on the conservative line. You are running on the MAGA line. You can't deny it.
I am running on the Republican, conservative, and libertarian lines. I courted Democrats. I sought an audience with the Democratic committees. I actually met with 2 of them, and then I was shut down because of politics. So to say that I'm only courting Republicans and that I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Republican, I'm not affiliated. And I'm not afraid. I've gone around to all these committees, including my Republican friends, Democrat friends. This is who I am. And I'm very comfortable being an independent, and I will remain that.
Mike,
Okay, we
in
sort of
2000
need to move on a little bit here, Manny. We only have 9 minutes left. I think we're arguing over political affiliation, and I'm not sure that the voters care about that as much as they do about the other issues. And the last topic that I think we're going to have time to touch on is restorative justice. And you know, there was the concept of restorative justice was one that was sort of much ballyhooed when former County Executive Michael Hein oversaw the creation of the Restorative Justice and Community Empowerment Center. I've not heard anything. I've not seen a press release. I've not heard a word in the last 3 years about anything having to do with restorative justice. And I hear from attorneys in the courthouse that there just isn't restorative justice going on. So I'd like to hear from each of you your understanding of what restorative justice is and what cases specifically it's appropriate for, and what, Manny, from you, what the DA's office is doing in that regard. And unfortunately, I think I lost track of who is up first.
Can't help you
I'll
there.
save you that. I'll save you that. I'll go first.
Okay.
Okay. Restorative justice is another alternative to incarceration. The Restorative Justice Center is a space that I have used to train our local police, our local law enforcement from all over Ulster County. That space is there for use by law enforcement, by community events to promote the well-being of Ulster County. As far as the use of restorative justice in court is concerned, it requires the participant, the accused, to meet face-to-face with the victim. And this is not in violent cases. These are not about cases that involve the serious cases that we were talking about earlier. It involves an individual who is the accused agreeing to meet with the victim and the victim agreeing to meet with them. And it's administered by Ulster County Probation and the family of Woodstock, who put the program together for these individuals to meet each and every time. I believe it's weekly until a resolution is come through. And then that individual who is accused has to accept responsibility for his or her behavior. It's mostly significant for young people, teenagers, people who are charged for their first offense. It is important in the community where you do not want to hit everything with a hammer as though it's a nail. It has worked, and defense attorneys have to exercise it with their clients because it requires a lot of time and because it requires their participation and admission of what they have done, taking responsibility. Many times they choose not to. The accused chooses not to. And both people, the victim and the accused, have to agree to participate.
Mike?
So I think what you referred to with Mike Hein establishing the Restorative Justice Center, I believe that facility cost the county $8 million. To date, I am unaware of anyone who's gone through the Restorative Justice Center and a restorative justice program. What Mr. Nneji has described as restorative justice, I think that's accurate. It's an opportunity for nonviolent offenders who enter the criminal justice system to receive counseling and to receive public support, admonition in a community group setting with the objective of restoring that person back into the community in better position than that person was when they entered it. I am a proponent of that. I think it's a terrific idea under the right circumstances. Nonviolent offenders, of course, the victim has to agree that that's a program that they are interested in. And I have spoken to members of the Public Defender's Office, local counsel, as apparently you have as well. It doesn't exist in Ulster County. It exists for juveniles. And from what I understand, it's a very successful program. And that's what restorative justice is primarily designed for juveniles, for students, young kids. As you get older, statistically, it's proven that it's less effective. But there is a certain sweet spot, 18 to 20 to 25 even, 25 is close, where that can be proven effective to make people understand the consequences of their action, to get them the type of counseling that's necessary to ground them and make them understand that their actions have consequences. When I announced, or just before I announced, I actually went in and spoke with Judge Rounds about the restorative justice program, and he's a big proponent of it. And we both decided that it would be a great idea to establish a county court restorative justice program, something that was never addressed by Mr. Clegg, whose campaign was grounded in restorative justice principles and promises made that restorative justice was going to be a cornerstone of his administration. It has not been. I will utilize restorative justice whenever possible under the appropriate circumstances.
Manny, I mean, is restorative justice happening in the county anywhere in any court? Are we seeing people being sent to restorative justice programs as opposed to simply going through the county courts or the local courts?
We have offered it, and it has been accepted in some instances in the local courts, and that's where it's used the most, because we're talking about people who have committed their first offense, young people. And the same thing like drug court, which has been extremely successful. The same thing like interim probation, which has been extremely successful. The same thing like conditional discharge, where somebody is told, you be good for 6 months and your charges will be dismissed. And that is something that most people prefer over restorative justice. The same thing like community service, where someone is ordered by the court to perform a certain amount of hours of community service, not because they didn't commit the crime, but because mercy, but because compassion, but because heart and dignity do matter. And we have to make sure to take those into account when we're dealing with individuals, depending on the circumstances and facts of each case. I have coached a lot of kids in Ulster County for 33 years now. I know what these young people go through. Some of them don't even understand the consequences of their actions. So we
have to move on.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, I can give you 30 seconds, but we are at 11:58 and I promised you guys each 2 minutes to close. So if you have a quick comment you'd like to make in sort of rebuttal, you can have 30 seconds. Otherwise, we'll move to closings.
I'll be very quick. The concepts and principles that Mr. Nneji explained about compassion and all that, I agree wholeheartedly. However, the restorative justice system that's been in place since 2020 is not being utilized at all. And that's a significant problem for an office that has promoted restorative justice as an alternative to incarceration.
Okay, thank you. So I want to thank you both again. It's 11:59, which means we're going to go over by a couple of minutes, and I do apologize, but I think that this was a good debate. I think that we talked about a lot of really important issues for the voters. Mike, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to just deliver some final remarks, and then Manny, you'll have 2 minutes to sort of deliver your final remarks and we'll call it a day. So Mike, go ahead.
Okay, very good. Well, first again, thank you for having this. This has been a good opportunity to discuss some of the issues. Mr. Nneji, I appreciate you being here. Despite what happened here today, despite no matter what happens in the result, you've always been a friend. I will continue to consider you a friend. You are a class act and a good human being. We disagree on a lot of things, and that's going to happen during campaigns. And in this situation, my position is that over the last 3.5 years, the Ulster County District Attorney's Office has not fulfilled their promise to Ulster County. Public safety is paramount, and there have been far too many missteps that have occurred over this time frame. Again, going back to cases that we've described where the District Attorney's Office didn't even show up for a murder trial when they had a perfectly viable alternative where they could have taken that case to appeal. They elected not to, and they chose a less conventional Article 78, which hasn't been decided yet. I think it's significant that Mr. Nneji, who has touted his experience for 33 years as a prosecutor, working closely with law enforcement on serious cases over the course of his career, has not been endorsed by any of them. And that is, again, a vote of no confidence. If anybody knows how that office is functioning internally and has an intimate knowledge of the problems or the benefits and the advantages, it would be members of law enforcement who work with them on a daily basis. And at this point in time, every single police agency and their PBAs that have endorsed candidates have endorsed me. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is because I have a long history working with law enforcement and working in this community and being a successful prosecutor, not just being a prosecutor for a long time, but being a successful prosecutor. And as a result, Ulster County saw some of the best years through that office during Holley Carnright's administration. And ever since 2020, when the administration changed over, there's been nothing but misstep after misstep. A vote for Mr. Nneji is a vote for the status quo in that office. And a vote for me is a vote for change in the right direction. And I'm asking the public to support me and to support change. Thank you.
Thank you. Manny?
Thank you very much. PBAs don't vote. Police officers do. And I trust that I will get most of the police officers that vote. And if I don't, I am still going to win, and we are going to work with them on every level, in every aspect, because it's all going to be about the victims of crime and the people of Ulster County. I have worked for the safety of everyone in Ulster County, and I've dedicated myself to the well-being of the youth of Ulster County for over 32 years. I had opportunities to go elsewhere and perhaps make more money, but Ulster County is the only home I have had since I came to America. Even during my 3 years of law school in Buffalo, I still return to Ulster County each year. What's in my heart about Ulster County is why I have served the people of Ulster County as a guardian of our safety for over 32 years. My care for the well-being of our children is what's in my heart. And that's why I have volunteered 10 to 20 hours or more a week for 32 years to serve the people of Ulster County. So you know what's in my heart as I run to be the District Attorney of Ulster County. I am not a politician, and I don't want to become one. I have never run for office of any kind. Some run for office to have power, to fulfill ambition, or to pursue a legacy. For me, I am running. Leadership is all about how you serve. I have served on the Ulster County DA's office since December 31st of 1990. Even when I was Assistant Attorney General, I was still serving Ulster County. The work ethic and leadership of the DA's office from 1990 through 2007 stands the test of time. But to my surprise, it changed from 2008 forward. While new laws have presented humongous challenges since 2020, since I have been appointed Chief Assistant DA 2 years ago, we have overcome those challenges. It matters to me and the people of Ulster County that we not return to what I saw when I returned to Ulster County DA's office from 2014 to 2019. Safety, fairness, and justice for all. That's the ticket. Go to mannyforda.com if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen, both of you, for joining us today. I think that we covered a lot of topics. There were some that were left untouched, but I thought that it was important that we spend the time on those issues that we did. Thank you again for joining us, and good luck. We'll be talking soon, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you, Mike.